Good morning everyone, and welcome to day one of Costume Symposium, also known as Cozy and 2021. If you're watching this on the original release date for my video, it's day one and we're going to be having a weekend full of awesome content put together completely free for all of you here right on YouTube. So if you're wanting to watch more of those videos, I'm going to link all of the social media as well as a playlist for the completed programming once we get everything put together at the end. So if you're watching this on the original release date, I don't have the full playlist yet, but it will be coming if you're coming back in the future. But now that you've gotten to hear all about Cozy, let's talk about making some hairnets. One of the fun projects I've always wanted to do to try and up-level my game here for my 16th century Florentine looks is making a knotted hairnet. Let's face it, the Elenora di Toledo really popularized these. I know a lot of us just wear hair in braids, well, hair tape, and there's a lot of different styles. But wearing these like knotted snood things is essential for some of the decades in the 16th century. The 1540s and 50s are particularly really important for this look. So we are going to do some knotted hairnets. To find out sort of how they would have done that in particular, I actually went to this book. Hopefully I can get the camera to not mirror and you guys can read the title. But it's Textiles and Clothing. It's put out by the Museum of London, and I'll put the description and ISBN number down in the descriptions for you. But one of the amazing things about it is that it actually has some finds that include hairnets as well as instructions on how to make them. So we're not going to spend a lot of time flipping through the book because I want to make sure that if this is a resource you want, you actually can go get it and I don't get flagged for copyright issues. But this is the historical basis for how I'm doing these hairnets. And because the book is written by archaeologists, not all of the verbiage was really jiving in my head. And I went to dig out this classic of my sewing and needlework library. It's the Reader's Digest Complete Guide to Needlework. I got this at a thrift store, or my mom got it for me from a thrift store in high school. This version of it was printed in 1979. I did not get it new in high school, but it's out there. If you find this book and you have any interest in needlecraft or like fiber art sort of things, short of spinning, it's an amazing resource. And it also has instructions on how to make netting. So I kind of cross-referenced the two of them. They worked really well together for this project, but I wouldn't use just one or the other for them because they both kind of filled in each other's gaps. If you're wanting to see some videos on how to do the actual knots, I'll also link one that I was using to kind of refresh myself and get the visual cues and rhythms going again. So let's go and start making some nets. What do you say? First up, we're going to need to make a practice net.
The first step in making any of these hairnets is going to be filling up our netting shuttle. It's kind of a combination of a weaver shuttle and a needle is kind of the way I've come to find it. You're going to want to lay your string down, wrap it around that needle, and I just keep rotating that and twisting the shuttle in my hand each time I make a pass. That way the thread's going on evenly. Now I'm only going to fill it up about halfway up the inner needle. That way I'm not wasting a bunch of thread. the first step in actually getting started, you're going to want to take the netting board that you're going to use. I'm just using a yardstick. Wrap that string around twice and tie just a simple square knot. You don't want it to be sliding. But that's going to give you your first starting loop, as well as keeping that loop even with the rest of the knots you're about to make. To get that first, or the second loop going, you're going to go over and under that netting board that you're using, and come back underneath the 2 loops from the previous larger loop and pull your string through another one that's been created. I'm very visual, probably not explaining this one, so I'm going to let you watch me do this a couple more times. The big thing I've noticed that really helps me keep my tension even is going to be, I was always keeping my working thread coming off of the loop to the left of my working station, and you really need to try and pinch your threads. If you don't, you might end up with either a knot that slides back and forth and makes your net inconsistent, or just uneven loop sizes. I would recommend not practicing with just a little piece of thread when you're doing this, and actually maybe grab some yarn. That way if you make a mistake, you can easily untie it. I redid this first section a couple of times and actually ended up cutting off the first 3 sets I had done about the time I got to the 4th row, just because it wasn't working very well. The net we're going to do is going to create just a giant square that we're going to gather into a headband, and with that we are going to be setting one side of the net so that we can then work off of the other. Eventually I get really tired of trying to shove the working loops into this jar to try and keep my working loops tensioned while I get them started, and I'm also having issues getting the string to stay on the left hand side while I do this, so I'm going to tie it to the lid of the jar rather than trying to tension it in between the jar and the lid. Ultimately, when I do my final version with metal thread, I'm going to ditch this jar altogether because it wasn't super helpful. It got the job done, but there were better ways to do it. If you just have an embroidery frame you're going to use to start already, you can just use the embroidery frame and tie it off on one of the sides. And just remember, pinching those bottom loops from the loop you're working around to create a knot is super important to keep the tension. That way your knot sets where you want it to, and you don't get those sliding knots. The more sliding knots you have, the more holes you're going to have in your hairnet, and more places for hair to poke out, braids to fall out, that sort of thing. And there we have it. We've got a finished base. So now I'm going to go and thread this onto my embroidery frame that I'm going to use as a foundation for continuing on my netting journey. Mine is just a simple scroll bar embroidery frame. I think I also picked this one up at a thrift store. But you'll want to thread the loops kind of alternating through the top dowel, and once I start actually having everything lined up evenly along that dowel, the netting process just takes off. It is so much faster. Having that crossbar to brace all of your stuff against, highly recommend. Definitely keep doing that. And hopefully this angle kind of illustrates what I'm doing with my shuttle just a little bit better for you. One easy way to double check that your nets are all still going to be the same size and that you're keeping your tension even is making sure the knots from the previous row are all lining up. You're going to try and create diamonds out of this, basically. When you're making these square nets, you're also going to find that most people can work from one side to the other, rather than just going back and forth. If you are that cool, let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear about it. I ended up, once I got to the end of the row, flipping my frame over. That way I could start from the same starting position on the next row and just going back and forth that way. It was so much easier for me. I tried and deleted a couple really awkward passes where I was trying to go back and forth and it just wasn't working for me. And as always, don't be afraid to untie your knots if you're having some trouble with things. I left in all of the issues I was having with trying to learn this process as much as I could. That way you might understand that not everybody has to be perfect at everything. We all have to learn somewhere. If you are finding this tutorial super helpful, I would really appreciate it if right now you took a second to go ahead and click that like button, help this video and all the others associated with it get out to some more people. We would love to be able to share our content around, and thank you so much for helping with that. If you want to watch more of my sewing adventures, definitely click that subscribe button and the notification bell. I got told by a couple of my friends who subscribed recently that YouTube may or may not be showing them the videos they want. So, click the subscribe button and definitely click that notification bell if you don't want to miss any of the cool videos that we're doing over here. So once I became comfortable and kind of had a basic idea of how this netting thing worked again, I'm going to start on actual metal thread. So this is Japanese gold embroidery floss. They traditionally use it out there for kimono, and you can buy it in these giant hanks online. I actually bought it in a spool years and years ago, and I'm not entirely sure how much I just put onto the shuttle. I filled it up a little bit more, it's closer to all the way full, because with metal thread you can easily work kinks into it, and I didn't want to wind it nearly as tightly as I did with my cotton thread. So when you're working with the metal threads, definitely give them a little bit more space. I'm going to be pausing a little bit more frequently to make sure I'm not bending the thread into some weird way. It's going to save a little bit of body and have a little bit more textile memory than just using a cotton or a silk will. In some ways, that's kind of helpful because it will help the hairnet mold around my hair, and my braids should start to train it into the relative shape. But at the same time, it can also keep a lot of the bends in there unless you gently start smoothing those out. Another good thing that I've learned through doing this is take a few minutes to untwist your metal thread if it's getting twisted up as you work. Again, just to help protect it and preserve it through this process. The Japanese metal thread that I'm using here, it's basically a cotton cord that they have then taken a tiny metal filament and wrapped it around that cord, giving it quite a bit of flexibility. But when you're working with precious metals, there's still a limit to how much flexibility you're really going to get. And once I got my netting started, I loaded it up onto the frame exactly like I did before. It was much easier to get the process started by just anchoring that initial row on here, taking it off, and then threading it back through the dowel. After completing all of the thread basically that I had on my shuttle, I figured, you know, this is roughly the size I want. I probably should have been measuring things a little more exactly. Most of my measuring consisted of taking this ribbon, making sure that it would fit around my head in the way I would want it to secure for being around my braids. I actually put my hair up in braids while I was working on this, try and get a better idea of where it would sit, what measurements needed to be. And then I start pinning the center points of each of the nets onto my little gold trim that I got out of my stash. And I'm just trying to kind of keep them evenly spaced. So I divided the ribbon in half, made that the center front of my forehead, found the two halfway marks between that and the edges, and more or less evenly spaced the rest of the knots in between. It was a super easy way to do it. There's probably a more mathematically accurate way to do it, but I'm not really one for doing that. If that's something you're interested in, more power to you. Go have fun. While I did work around the net into this headband, I was trying to also catch any of the loose ends that I had from the beginning or end of making my net, and try to tuck them in under the headband so I could do a whip stitch around them and secure it in there. So there's 2 spots, maybe 3 spots, where you see an extra loop coming back into the headband on here. And that's all it is. It's me trying to find a neat and secure way to keep that metal thread from unraveling or sticking out like something from the little rascals on top of my head. The last step of getting this hairnet assembled is going to be whip stitching the points of the net directly back into this metal trim headband. And that's all I'm going to be doing to secure it. I don't need to do any heavy knot work, anything like that. And my hairnet's done. Placing it over the finished 16th century Florentine hairstyle was pretty easy. It does give me a greater respect for how much hair Eleonora probably had, even compared to mine, which is pretty long and I wouldn't say super thin anymore. It's about a medium thickness. But this is me trying it on without really snugging it down over those braids. I figured out after this shot that it's fitting a little bit better if I overlap the bottom just at the nape of my neck and pin it together, just like you would do with a veil pin. My hairnet ended up being just a little big for this hairstyle, but if I'm wearing a extra hairpiece or something under it, it's going to be completely perfect. Or if I position my braids just slightly higher up on my head.
So what do you think of the hairnet? I personally love it. I love the way that it fits around my head. I'm actually just securing it at the nape of my neck with a little straight pin right now because I want to see how it fits over different braiding arrangements before I try and cinch it down in any particular way. You could also theoretically just put a couple of ties on there and be able to tie it shut. Especially if you start growing your hair out or it's getting thicker, you use hair pieces. Being able to expand it just a little bit at the nape of the neck where it might be hidden by the roll of your hair being covered by the net would be super helpful. Yeah, in general, I really love my hairnet. I didn't put pearls on it for cozy just because I wanted to be able to get it done for you. That way you could see it, and I've got an event this weekend, which is why I'm not on any of the lives that you're gonna find. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you go and check out more of our fellow costubing friends over there on the Cozy server. Check out Discord, we've got Instagram hashtags for you. And I'll see you tomorrow with my other video. And if you're watching this in the viewer, I'll see you next time. Bye. And so what do you think? I love the way this hairnet looks on me. It's doing exactly what I want it to do. The small pucker that I had on one of the sides of my head is probably more to do with not evenly, or the netting not